大家好，旭大事非同凡响，我是童文勋。今天呢，我们继续来看伊隆马斯克的DOGE将影响到全世界，这是我们的预判哈。那可是他并不是一帆风顺的，事实上他现在在美国呢，因为他们实在是动到太多人的利益了。你想想看，砍掉一个联邦政府的预算的一半，它影响到多少人？非常的庞大。美国的国内以及国外的整个大的利益集团，或者是说国际的深层政府吧，哈。好，那白宫呢？事实上，川普前天跟伊隆马斯克，那伊隆马斯克带他儿子，所以看起来像三代人啊。到底美国的人能不能承受这个真相？他们到底是不是真的认识到这个政府其实是有两个政府？一个政府是民选的政府，一个政府是官僚体系。这个官僚体系呢，准备长长久久的存在，没有想到会遇到伊隆马斯克跟川普，他们联手起来要做一个大刀阔斧的改革。好，那我们就来看左媒，好，就是所谓的传统媒体啊，主流媒体的最大的一个表率。好，我们来看 CNN 好了。CNN 怎么样来评论？怎么样来攻击伊隆马斯克？因为他没有办法攻击川普。川普他是总统，他是民选的总统，而且他普选票也赢了，他还赢了州，他还赢了议会，没有办法攻击川普，只好攻击马斯克。攻击他不是民选的，攻击他的代表权、他的代表性，以及他们通过忠诚检查、安全检查，他怎么可以看这么多的国家机密？不去谈他到底查到了什么，他对国家有多少贡献，反而是这种枝微末节的地方，然后说什么这会侵害到人权、侵害到隐私。那我们总是要看看啊，这些匪夷所思的说法总是一个说法嘛，哈。我们先来看这些说法。那 CNN 呢，它事实上它有数位的网络的媒体啊，有影像的。可是常常呢，它的综合报道，就是在它 CNN 的网页上的综合报道，其实可以看到更多的综合的内容哈，就是不同的主播啊，对这些内容呢，他们会做一个总整理，总共有3个记者，好，一起来整理出来。这个是美东时间的2月11号的一个报道哈，我们先来分享这个报道。好。那这个内容呢，不管大家多么不以为然啊，还是要把它看完，因为我们总要知道主流媒体以及现在美国反对DOGE、反对查核，你的钱存在银行被银行偷走了，然后会计师告诉你说，嘿，出问题了，你不是去骂那个银行，不是去跟银行把钱追回来，而是骂那个会计师，现在就是目前攻击的状态哈。但是我们来看看他们攻击是什么。有没有道理，以及这些攻击是不是很重要的一个法益，然后能不能解决，还是应该把伊隆马斯克开除哈？好，我们先来看这个相片。这个题目是说，伊隆马斯克吹捧DOGE的透明度，可是却淡化自己潜在的利益冲突。潜在哦，他抓到了这些弊端，比潜在的利益冲突还要重要吗？好，我们来看这张相片。这张相片就是在椭圆形办公室哈，你可以看得出来这张桌子有历任美国总统使用过，然后椭圆形办公室也不是非常的大。那最近呢，椭圆形办公室里面的这一些前总统的画像啊，多了一张画像，多了雷根的画像哈，我觉得这个也是值得一提的。但是从这个角度拍不到雷根的画像哈。然后3代人，好，这个是伊隆马斯克跟川普哈，伊隆马斯克站着，对于总统的尊重哈，在这个房间里面，总统坐着，他站着哈。那他没有领薪水，他纯粹是义务的协助。然后他儿子好小 X 哈，好，这看起来像义父义子的关系，然后一家3口3代人，好，所以伊隆马斯克因为是出生在南非，所以依照美国的宪法，他是不能够选总统的。可是他儿子可以啊。也许30年后，伊隆马斯克的儿子会变成议员， 然后走向为国家服务之路？我觉得机会很大，因为他现在已经完全不怯场，才4、5岁的孩子哈，完全不怯场。好，川普就丢球给伊隆马斯克去回答问题。那最近也有一个新闻，就是说川普突然拒绝美联社进去椭圆形办公室采访，为什么呢？因为美联社发表说他们拒绝把墨西哥湾叫做美洲湾哈。好，所以现在引发一个到底是有这个妨碍他的言论自由的一个争议啊。但那个是毛毛雨，所以我们就是当一个花边来谈。那 CNN 说什么呢？现在大概这篇文章还蛮长的哈。这个他说啊，伊隆马斯克世界首富，然后他正领导重塑联邦政府的一个大规模的行动。周二的时候呢，他在椭圆形办公室为他的深远影响这个举措进行了大概20几分钟的一个辩护哈。然后呢，当川普总统坐在桌子旁观的时候呢，马斯克呢站在离他几尺远的地方，穿着一件黑色的长外套，旁边有他4岁的儿子 X。他对于他动用权力破坏整个机构的问题不以为然，表示说川普去年11月的当选足以让他执行选民的意愿。伊隆马斯克说，人民投票支持政府的重大改革就是人民要得到的，这就是民主的真谛。然后批评他的说法是这样子，他说伊隆马斯克长篇大论的对于联邦官僚机构进行了严厉的批评，他称联邦官僚机构充斥着未经选举的骗子，他们收受回扣，其中一些人通过欺骗成为百万富翁。伊隆马斯克说，我认为现实的情况是他们以牺牲纳税人的钱作为代价来获取财富，可是他并没有提供国际开发署员工的证据，而美国国际开发署是他已经决定要关掉的政府机构之一。好，然后伊隆马斯克说，他跟总统几乎每一天都在谈论要采取什么行动，以及在庞大的联邦政府内将注意力集中在哪些地方。他的举动在国会民主党人中间引起了5级警报，而共和党的人的反应呢则沉默很多。所以考虑到国会、法院与民众对马斯克的密切关注，川普呢就找他来回答问题，并解释DOGE在本届政府执政前3个礼拜所做的事情。助手们表示星期二的露面是为了消除一些神秘感，同时呢也让白宫表明马斯克是按照总统的指示来行事，而不是政府内部的流氓操作者。然后马斯克跟川普之间的融洽关系得到了充分的展现。好，然后整体而言马斯克的表态是比较正面的，川普大部分时间是坐着听而已，虽然不断的插话要求马斯克进一步阐述他声称的在政府内部发生的一些浪费的现象。那川普说他是一个成功的人，这就是我希望他做这件事情的原因我们不想让一个不成功的人来处理这件事情。好，马斯克承认4年前他投票支持拜登，那去年呢他却成为川普的最大的支持者之一而且呢在2024的大选，他花费了超过2.5亿来提升川普的候选资格，然后2个人都大力宣扬缩减跟重组联邦政府的努力，并表示美国选民将川普送入白宫，就是为了要改革华盛顿的运作方式。好，然后呢大概就是一些细节的陈述了谈到马斯克的儿子爬到他的肩膀上玩他的头发然后摘下他那一顶黑色的让美国再次伟大的帽子好，然后接下来就开始攻击他了这个所谓的利益冲突呢，是谈到说可能他现在接下来要去检查的是国防部，可是国防部可能跟他的公司SpaceX 有合约那伊隆马斯克说，我们的所有的行动都是完全公开的，如果你看到类似伊隆在那里可能存在冲突的事情， 人们不会因为害羞所以不讲啊，他们会立刻说出来的。那我们就可以来检视是不是真的有利害冲突，而且你必须要看啊，签合约人是不是我？签合约人其实并不是我。然后这篇报道里面呢，标题非常的耸动，可是有没有讲到真正的利害、潜在的利害冲突是什么呢？没有。而且川普呢，对于这件事情他也有回应啊，他说如果真的有利益冲突的话，他会进行干预。所以呢，大家来看这篇访谈哈，他其实还蛮长篇大论，但是都在叙述这个椭圆形办公室里面发生的一些非常琐碎的细节，反而对于伊隆马斯克所陈述的一些抓到的弊端呢，把它淡化了。然后他标题虽然非常的耸动，什么马斯克觉得他被做了什么肛门科检查哈，然后他因为不是有薪水的一个官员，他根本不需要对他的财务做披露嘛哈，因为正式的官员、高阶的官员是要做财务披露的，那他也不需要啊，所以为什么要对伊隆马斯克这么苛刻？我觉得完全是离题了，真的是离题了，而且其实从头到尾我们并没有看到CNN 这篇报道有说清楚哪里存在任何的冲突。那所以对于这个假设的问题，伊隆马斯克要如何作答呢？他最好的回答就是，如果你们认为有利害冲突的话，那你们应该会马上举出来。就像伊隆马斯克的 X， 他自己的 Twitter 哈，如果说他有说任何东西是错的，马上会有2.1亿的人检查他。连一个错字都马上1秒就有人去举出来，伊隆马斯克你拼错字了，就是这样子。所以在他的位置，事实上他完全透明这件事情，我觉得是可以被信赖的。与其去揣测说他有什么样利害冲突，一旦利害冲突真的发生的话，那民主党的议员，包括这些主流媒体，哪一个人会放过他呢？所以我们今天后半段呢，就完整的披露这个伊隆马斯克他在椭圆形办公室以及川普在跟媒体访谈的时候，总共20几分钟啊，所以我们就以这一段影片来做结尾。
Coming Muffin?
X, are you okay? This is X, and he's a great guy, high IQ. He's a high IQ individual.
And he's got this, check out this cool train he's got.
So thank you very much. We had a busy day today. The king just left, and we've had a great discussion, terrific discussion concerning Gaza and everything else. We had discussions also about Saturday at 12 o'clock. It's going to be a big moment. We'll see what happens. I don't expect much happening with these people, but we'll see what happens. And we're going to be signing a very important deal today. It's DOGE, and I'm going to ask Elon to tell you a little bit about it and some of the things that we found, which are shocking. Billions and billions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse. And I think it's very important. And that's one of the reasons I got elected. I say we're going to do that. Nobody had any idea it was that bad, that sick, and that corrupt. And it seems hard to believe that judges want to try and stop us from looking for corruption, especially when we found hundreds of millions of dollars worth, much more than that, in just a short period of time. And we want to weed out the corruption. And it seems hard to believe that a judge could say, we don't want you to do that. Well, so maybe we have to look at the judges, because that's very serious. I think it's a very serious violation. I'll ask Elon Musk to say a few words, and we'll take some questions. Elon, go ahead.
Sure. So at a high level, if you say what is the goal of DOGE, and I think a significant part of the presidency is to restore democracy. This may seem like, well, aren't we in a democracy? Well, if you don't have a feedback loop, okay, X, we would have to, if you sorry. tell you, gravitas can be difficult sometimes. If there's not a good feedback loop from the people to the government, and if you have rule of the bureaucrat, if the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have? If the people cannot vote and have their will be decided by their elected representatives in the form of the president and the Senate and the House, then we don't live in a democracy, we live in a bureaucracy. So it's incredibly important that we close that feedback loop, we fix that feedback loop, and that the public's elected representatives, the president, the House, and the Senate, decide what happens, as opposed to a large unelected bureaucracy. This is not to say that there are good people who are in the federal bureaucracy, but you can't have an autonomous federal bureaucracy. You have to have one that is responsive to the people. That's the whole point of a democracy. And if you looked at this, if you asked the founders today and said, what do you think of the way things have turned out? Well, we have this unelected fourth unconstitutional branch of government, which is the bureaucracy, which has, in a lot of ways, currently more power than any elected representative. And this is not something that people want, and it does not match the will of the people. So it's just something we've got to fix. And then we've also got to address the deficit. So we've got a $2 trillion deficit, and if we don't do something about this deficit, the country's going bankrupt. I mean, it's really astounding that the interest payments alone on the national debt exceed the Defense Department budget, which is shocking because we spend a lot of money on defense. But if that just keeps going, we're essentially going to bankrupt the country. So what I really want to say is, like, it's not optional for us to reduce the federal expenses. It's essential. It's essential for America to remain solvent as a country, and it's essential for America to have the resources necessary to provide things to its citizens and not simply be servicing vast amounts of debt.
And also, could you mention some of the things that your team has found, some of the crazy numbers, including the woman that walked away with about $30 million,
right,
et cetera?
Well, we do find it sort of rather odd that there are quite a few people in the bureaucracy who have ostensibly a salary of a few $100,000, but somehow manage to accrue tens of millions of dollars in net worth while they are in that position, which is, what happened at USAID. We're just curious as to where it came from. Maybe they're very good at investing, in which case we should take their investment advice, perhaps. But there seems to be mysteriously they get wealthy. We don't know why. Where does it come from? And I think the reality is that they're getting wealthy at the taxpayer expense. That's the honest truth of it. So, we're looking at, if you look at, say Treasury, for example, basic controls that should be in place, that are in place in any company, such as making sure that any given payment has a payment categorization code, that there is a comment field that describes the payment, and that if a payment is on the do not pay list, that you don't actually pay it. None of those things are true currently. So the reason that departments can't pass audits is because the payments don't have a categorization code. It's like just a massive number of blank checks just flying out the building. So you can't reconcile blank checks. You've got comment fields that are also blank, so you don't know why the payment was made. And then we've got this truly absurd, a do not pay list, which can take up to a year for an organization to get on a do not pay list. And this, we're talking about terrorist organizations, we're talking about known fraudsters, known aspects of waste, known things that do not match any congressional appropriation, can take up to a year to get on the list, and even once on the list is not used. It's mind-blowing. So what we're talking about here, we're really just talking about adding common sense controls that should be present, that haven't been present. So you say, like, well, how could such a thing arise? That seems crazy. When you understand that really everything is geared towards complaint minimization. So then you understand the motivations. So if people receive money, they don't complain, obviously. But if people don't receive money, they do complain. And the fraudsters complain the loudest and the fastest. So then when you understand that, then it makes sense. Oh, that's why everything they approve all the payments at Treasury. Because if you approve all the payments, you don't get complaints. But now we're saying that, no, actually, we are going to complain. If money is spent badly, if your taxpayer dollars are not spent in a sensible and frugal manner, then that's not okay. Your tax dollars need to be spent wisely on things that matter to the people. I mean, these things, it's just common sense. It's not draconian or radical, I think. It's really just saying, let's look at each of these expenditures and say, is this actually in the best interest of the people? And if it is, it's approved. If it's not, we should think about it. So, and there's crazy things like just cursory examination of Social Security, and we've got people in there that are 150 years old. Now, do you know anyone that's 150? I don't. Okay. They should be on the Guinness Book of World Records. They're missing out. So, that's the case where, I think they're probably dead. It's my guess. Or they should be very famous, one of the two. And then there's a whole bunch of Social Security payments where there's no identifying information. Well, why is there no identifying information? Obviously, we want to make sure that people who deserve to receive Social Security do receive it, and that they receive it quickly and accurately. I'll tell you another crazy thing. So, one of the things is we are trying to sort of right-size the federal bureaucracy, just make sure that this, obviously there need to be a lot of people working for the federal government, but not as many as currently. So we're saying, well, okay, let's, if people can retire, with full benefits and everything, that would be good. They can retire, get their retirement payments and everything. And then we were told, this is actually, I think, a great anecdote, because we were told, no, the most number of people that could retire possibly in a month is 10,000. We're like, well, why is that? Well, because all the retirement paperwork is manual on paper. It's manually calculated, then written down on a piece of paper. Then it goes down a mine. And I'm like, what do you mean a mine? Yeah, there's a limestone mine where we store all the retirement paperwork. And you look at a picture of this mine. We'll post some pictures afterwards. And this mine looks like something out of the 50s because it was started in 1955. So it looks like it's like a time warp. And then the speed, then the limiting factor is the speed at which the mine shaft elevator can move determines how many people can retire from the federal government. And the elevator breaks down sometimes, and then nobody can retire. Doesn't that sound crazy? There's like 1,000 people that work on this. So I think if we take those people and say, you know what, instead of working in a mine shaft and carrying manila envelopes to boxes in a mine shaft, you could do practically anything else, and you would add to the goods and services of the United States in a more useful way. So anyway, so I think that's an example. At a high level, if you say how do we increase prosperity, is we get people to shift from roles that are low to negative productivity to high productivity roles. And so increase the total output of goods and services, which means that there's a higher standard of living available for everyone. That's the actual goal. Everyone's very quiet. Are people normally this quiet?
Your detractors, Mr. Musk.
What?
Including a lot of Democrats.
I have detractors?
You do, sir.
I don't believe it.
Say that you're orchestrating a hostile takeover of government and doing it in a non-transparent way. What's your response to that criticism?
Well, first of all, you couldn't ask for a stronger mandate from the public. The public voted. We have a majority of the public voting for President Trump. We won the House. We won the Senate. The people voted for major government reform. There should be no doubt about that. That was on the campaign. The president spoke about that at every rally. The people voted for major government reform, and that's what people are going to get. They're going to get what they voted for. And a lot of times, people that don't get what they voted for, but in this presidency, they are going to get what they voted for. And that's what democracy is all about.
Mr. Musk, the White House says that you will identify and excuse yourself from any conflicts of interest that you may have. Does that mean that you are, in effect, policing yourself? What are the checks and balances that are in place to ensure that there is accountability and transparency?
Well, we actually are trying to be as transparent as possible. In fact, we post our actions to the DOGE handle on X and to the DOGE website. So all of our actions are maximally transparent. In fact, I don't think there's been, I don't know of a case where an organization has been more transparent than the DOGE organization. So, you know, and the kind of things we're doing are, I think, very, very simple and basic. They're not, you know, what I mentioned, for example, about Treasury, just making sure that payments that go out, taxpayer money that goes out, is categorized correctly, that the payment is explained, that organizations on the do not pay list, which takes a lot to get there, that actually are not paid, which currently they are paid. These are not individual judgment decisions. These are about simply having sensible checks and balances in the system itself to ensure that taxpayer money is spent well. So it's got nothing to do with, like, say, a contract for some company of mine at all.
But if there is a conflict of interest when it comes to you yourself, for instance, you've received billions of dollars in federal contracts when it comes to the Pentagon, for instance, which the president, I know, has directed you to look into.
Yeah.
Are you policing yourself in that? Is there any sort of accountability check and balance in place that would provide any transparency for the American people?
Well, all of our actions are fully public. So if you see anything, you say, like, wait a second, hey, Elon, that seems like maybe that's, you know, there's a conflict there. It's not like people are going to be shy about saying that. They'll say it immediately, you know?
Including you yourself?
Yes. But transparency is what builds trust, not simply somebody asserting trust. So not somebody saying they're trustworthy, but transparency, so you can see everything that's going on. And then you can see, am I doing something that benefits one of my companies or not? It's totally obvious.
And if we thought that, we would not let him do that segment or look in that area if we thought there was a lack of transparency or a conflict of interest. And we watch that also. He's a big businessman. He's a successful guy. That's why we want him doing this. We don't want an unsuccessful guy doing this. Now, one thing also that Elon hasn't really mentioned are the groups of people that are getting some of these payments. They're ridiculous. And we're talking about billions of dollars that we've already found. We found fraud and abuse. I would say those two words as opposed to the third word that I usually use, but in this case, fraud and abuse. It's abusive because most of these things are virtually made up, or certainly money shouldn't be sent to them. And you know what I'm talking about. It's crazy. So, but we're talking about tens of billions of dollars that we've already found. And now a judge who's an activist judge wants to try and stop us from doing this. Why? Why would they want to do that? I campaigned on this. I campaigned on the fact that I said government is corrupt. And it is very corrupt. It's very, very, it's also foolish. As an example, a man has a contract for 3 months and the contract ends, but they keep paying him for the next 20 years, you know, because nobody ends a contract. You got a lot of that. You have a contract that's a 3-month contract. Now, normally, if you're in a small, in all fairness, it's the size of this thing is so big.
Yeah.
But if you have a contract and you're in a regular business, you end the contract in 3 months. You know it's a consultant. Here's a contract for 3 months, but it goes on for 20 years. And the guy doesn't say that he got money for 20 years, you know? They don't say it. They just keep getting checks month after month. And you have various things like that, and even much worse than that, actually, much worse. And I guess you call that incompetence, maybe.
Yeah.
It could be corruption. It could be deals made on both sides, you know, where the guy gets the money, he kicks. I think there's a lot of kickback here. I see a lot of kickback here.
There's a lot of kickbacks.
Yeah, tremendous kickback, because nobody could be so stupid to give out some of these contracts, so he has to get a kickback. So that's what I got elected for, that and borders and military and a lot of things, but this is a big part of it. And I hope that the court system is going to allow us to do what we have to do. We got elected to among other things, find all of this fraud, abuse, all of this horrible stuff going on. And we've already found billions of dollars, not like a little bit, billions, many billions of dollars. And when you get down to it, it's going to be probably close to $1 trillion. It could be close to $1 trillion that we're going to find. That will have quite an impact on the budget. And you'll go to a judge where they handpick a judge, and he has certain leanings. I'm not knocking anybody for that, but he has certain leanings. And he wants us to stop looking. How do you stop looking? I mean, we've already found it. We have a case in New York where a hotel has paid $59 million, $59 million because it's housing migrants, illegal migrants. All illegal, I believe.
And they were being paid twice the normal room rate at 100% occupancy.
Unbelievable.
So it's a racket.
Mr. Musk, can I ask a question?
Well, if I may sort of just going for the President's comments, at a high level, you say, well, what are the two ingredients that are really necessary in order to cut the budget deficit in half from $2 trillion to $1 trillion? And it's really two things: competence and caring. And if you add competence and caring, you'll cut the budget deficit in half. And I fully expect to be scrutinized and get a daily proctology exam, basically. Might as well just camp out there. So it's not like I think I can get away with something. I'll be scrutinized nonstop. But with the support of the President, we can cut the budget deficit in half from $2 trillion to $1, and then with deregulation, because there's a lot of sort of regulations that don't ultimately serve the public good. We need to free the builders of America to build. And if we do that, that means I think we can get the economic growth to be maybe 3-4%, maybe 5%. And that means if you can get $1 trillion of economic growth and you cut the budget deficit by $1 trillion, between now and next year, there is no inflation. There's no inflation in 26. And if the government is not borrowing as much, it means that interest costs decline. So everyone's, the mortgage, their car payment, their credit card bills, anything, their student debt, the monthly payments drop. That's a fantastic scenario for the average American. I mean, imagine they're going down the grocery aisle and the prices from one year to the next are the same, and their mortgage, all their debt payments dropped. How great is that for the average American?
We had no idea we were going to find this much. And it's open. It's not like complicated. It's not simple stuff. It's like,
a lot of work. Yeah.
We can't believe it. A lot of work, a lot of smart people involved, very, very smart people. But you're talking about anywhere, maybe $500 billion. It's crazy the kind of numbers you're talking
really crazy.
about. Normally when you're looking at something, you'll find you're looking for 1 out of 100. Here, you're almost reversing it. You look for one that's good.
Yeah.
And you can look at the title and you say, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And the public gets it. The public gets it. You've seen the polls. The public is saying, why are we paying all this money? This for years, this has gone on.
Mr. Musk, President Trump.
Yeah, go ahead. Wait, go ahead.
Senator Rand Paul today said that DOGE cuts will ultimately need a vote in Congress. Do you agree with that? Is that the plan?
I really don't know. I know this. We're finding tremendous fraud and tremendous abuse. If I need a vote of Congress to find fraud and abuse, it's fine with me. I think we'll get the vote, although there'll be some people that wouldn't vote. And how could a judge want to hold us back from finding all of this fraud and finding all of this incompetence? Why would that happen? Why would even Congress want to do that? Now, Congress, if we do need a vote, I think we'd get a very easy vote because we have a track record now. We've already found billions of dollars of abuse, incompetence, and corruption. A lot of corruption.
If a judge does block one of your policies, part of your agenda, will you abide by that ruling? Will you comply?
Well, I always abide by the courts, and then I'll have to appeal it. But then what he's done is he slowed down the momentum, and it gives crooked people more time to cover up the books. If a person's crooked and they get caught, other people see that, and all of a sudden it becomes harder later on. So, yeah, the answer is I always abide by the courts, always abide by them, and will appeal. But appeals take a long time, and I would hope that a judge, if you go into a judge and you show him, here's a corrupt situation, we have a check to be sent, but we found it to be corrupt. Do you want us to send this corrupt check to a person, or do you want us not to give it and give it back to the taxpayer? I would hope a judge would say, don't send it, give it back to the taxpayer.
Yeah, if I can add to that, what we're finding is that a bunch of the fraud is not even going to Americans. So I think we can all agree that if there's going to be fraud, it should at least go to Americans. But a bunch of the fraud rings that are operating in the United States and taking advantage of the federal government, especially in the entitlements programs, are actually foreign fraud rings. They're operating in other countries and actually exporting money to other countries. We should stop that.
Mr. Musk,
And this is big numbers. Talk about $100 to $200 billion a year.
Sure.
Serious money.
Mr. Musk, you said on X
Yeah.
that an example of the fraud that you have cited was $50 million of condoms was sent to Gaza. But after fact-check this, it apparently Gaza in Mozambique, and the program was to protect them against HIV. So can you correct the statements? It wasn't sent to Hamas, actually. It was sent to Mozambique, which makes sense why condoms was sent there.
Yeah.
And how can we make sure that all the statements that you said were correct, so we can trust what you say?
Well, first of all, some of the things that I say will be incorrect and should be corrected. So nobody's going to bat 1,000. I mean, we will make mistakes, but we'll act quickly to correct any mistakes. I'm not sure we should be sending $50 million worth of condoms to anywhere, frankly. I'm not sure that's something Americans would be really excited about. And that is really an enormous number of condoms, if you think about it. But if it went to Mozambique instead of Gaza, I'm like, okay, that's not as bad, but still, why are we doing that?
Mr. Musk, can you talk a little bit about how closely you're working with agency heads as you're directing these cuts? Do they have how much input do agency heads have when you're making these decisions?
Yeah, we work closely with the agency heads, yeah, so there are sort of checks in place. So it's not just us just going in and doing things willy-nilly. It's in partnership with the agency heads, and I check frequently with the president to make sure that this is what the president wants to have happen. So we talk almost every day, and I double check things to make sure, is this something, Mr. President, you want us to do this? Then we'll do it.
USAID has been one of your main targets. Are you concerned at all that some of the cuts or that shutting that agency altogether may lead to diseases or other bigger problems starting in other countries that then come to the United States?
Yeah, so that's an interesting example. So that's something where we work closely with the State Department and Secretary Rubio. And we have, for example, turned on funding for Ebola prevention and for HIV prevention.
Left that, you said?
Yes, correct. And we are moving fast, so we will make mistakes, but we'll also fix the mistakes very quickly. So
Do you see it as a worthy cause, USAID?
I think that there are some worthy things, but overall, if you say what is the bang for the buck, I would say it was not very good. And there was far too much of what USAID was doing was influencing elections in ways that I think were dubious and do not stand the light of day.
I can just ask a follow-up to the Pentagon contracts. If you have received billions of dollars in contracts from the Pentagon, and the president's directing you to look into the Department of Defense, is that
we
a
definitely need
conflict
to
of
do
interest?
and are going to do at the president's request.
Does that present a conflict of interest for you?
No, because you'd have to look at the individual contract and say, first of all, I'm not the one, filing the contract. It's people at SpaceX or someone who will be putting for the contract. And I'd like to say, if you see any contract where where it was awarded to SpaceX and it wasn't by far the best value for money for the taxpayer, let me know, because every one of them was.
The president said the other day that you might look at treasuries. Could you explain that a little bit? What kind of fraud, and that question goes to both of you, what kind of fraud are you expecting to see or do you see right now in U.S. treasuries?
Yeah, I think you mean the Treasury Department as opposed to Treasury bills, or.
You also referenced treasuries on Air Force One the other night.
Go ahead.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, really the first order of business is to make sure we're actually collecting. Sorry for this. I thought my son might enjoy this, but he's sticking his fingers in my ears and stuff. So it's a bit hard to hear sometimes. Hey, stop that. The stuff we're doing with the Treasury Department is so basic that you can't believe it doesn't exist already. So for example, like I mentioned, just making sure that when a payment goes out, it has to have a payment categorization code. It's like, what type of payment is this? You can't just leave the field blank. Currently, many payments, the field is left blank. And you have to describe what's the payment for, some basic rationalization. That also is left blank. So this is why, the Pentagon, when's the last time the Pentagon passed an audit? I mean, a decade ago, maybe? Ever? Really? And we want to, just in order to actually pass audits, you have to have financial information that allows you to trace the payments. And once in a while, the Treasury has to pause payments if it thinks the payment is going to a fraudulent organization. If a company or an organization is on a do not pay list, we should not pay it. I'm sure you would agree. It's like if it's quite hard to get on that payment, the do not pay list, it means that this is someone that is just, it's like dead people, terrorists, known fraudsters, that kind of thing. We should not pay them. But currently we do, which is crazy. We should stop that.
Many transactions. And by the way, hundreds, thousands of transactions like that. We have a big team. And for the sake of the country, I hope that the person that's in charge and the other people that report to me that are in charge are allowed to do the right thing, namely make sure everything's honest, legitimate, and competent. But we're looking at just, when you look at USAID, that's one. We're going to look at the military. We're going to look at education. They're much bigger areas. But the USAID is really corrupt. I'll tell you, it's corrupt. It's incompetent, and it's really corrupt. And I can't imagine a judge saying, well, it may be corrupt, but you don't have the right. You got elected to look over the country and to, as we say, make America great again, but you don't have the right to go and look and see whether or not things are right that they're paying or that things are honest that they're paying. And nobody can even believe this. Other people, law professors, they've been saying, how can you take that person's right away? You're supposed to be running the country, but we're not allowed to look at who they're paying it to and what they're paying. We have massive amounts of fraud that we caught. I think we probably caught way over a lot of billions of dollars already in, 2 weeks?
Yes.
And it's going to go to numbers that you're not going to believe. And much, as I said, much is incompetence and much is dishonesty. We have to catch it. And the only way we're going to catch it is to look for it. And if a judge is going to say you're not allowed to look for it, that's pretty sad for our country. I don't understand how it could even work.
On the buyout program, can you personally guarantee that?
Which one?
The buyout program, the offer to federal workers. Can you personally guarantee that the workers who opt in to resign now will be paid through September?
They'll get their money, but they're getting a good deal. They're getting a big buyout. And what we're trying to do is reduce government. We have too many people. We have office space. It's occupied by 4%. Nobody's showing up to work because they were told not to. And then Biden gave them a 5-year pass, some of them, 48,000 of them, gave them a 5-year pass, that for 5 years you don't have to show up to work. And let me tell you, this is largely, much of this stuff is because of Biden. It's his fault. He allowed this country, what he did on our border. What he did on our border is almost not as bad as what he did with all of these contracts that have come out. It's a very sad day when we look at it. I can't even believe it. But many contracts just extend, and they just keep extending, and there was nobody there to correct it. And that cannot be, I can't imagine that could be held up by the court. Any court that would say that the president or his representatives, like Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of State, whatever, doesn't have the right to go over their books and make sure everything's honest. I mean, how can you have a country? You can't have anything that way. You can't have a business that way. You can't have a country that way. Hey, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. No, they were very nice. We were treated very nicely by Russia, actually. I hope that's the beginning of a relationship where we can end that war and millions of people can stop being killed. They've lost millions of people. They lost, in terms of soldiers, probably 1.5 million soldiers in a short period of time. We got to stop that war. And I'm interested primarily from the standpoint of death. We're losing all those soldiers. And they're not American soldiers, they're Ukrainian and Russian soldiers. But you're probably talking about 1.5 million. I think we got to bring that one to an end. Okay? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let's go. Thank you.所以看完这段影片，其实大家可以 对比 CNN 的那篇报道，乏善可陈，没有什么内容，可是标题很耸动。好，所以是标题党、标题杀，让你感觉说他真的有利害冲突，但利害冲突在哪里？完全没有任何的具体的陈述。伊隆马斯克反而非常的坦然，川普也非常的坦然。如果有利害冲突的话，那我会马上阻止他，我不会允许他这么做，就这么简单。好，所以大家可以从他们的对谈透明化，可以自己去做判断，到底这件事情应不应该执行。那以现在美国民众的民意调查的结果可以看得出来，显然大部分的民众除了亚裔，大部分是支持的。然后美国到底能不能承受他们所挖掘出来的真相？我觉得在第一时间的 shock 之后，应该是可以理解的，因为贪污腐败无所不在，那能够把它抓出来，而且这么快迅速的把它抓出来，这么具体的方法，却是史无前例的。我们只能说羡慕美国有这么多巨人站出来，愿意扛起所有的重担哈。那我们也希望这样的一个监督政府的方法 ，AI 的技术引进来之后，可以让全世界的每一个政府都一样的清廉，一样的小规模，缩小预算，缩小支出，把最多的税收拿来造福民众。我们下一集见。
与自由相逢，灰色的天空，偶尔飘着轻轻的风，无声绽放的玫瑰，日与夜穿过门缝，凋零无梦。不认识过去，对未来不懂，身在困局，该挣扎还是顺从？干涩的眼，很久没有泪水包容。老巷子里的书信，也早已尘封。与自由重逢，呼唤的传说，千年后依然在心中。失去野心的力量，声音在风中空洞，悲伤与共。不再有梦，我们犯的错都相同，苍白面容，梦想已空。重生与希望，就要挣脱牢笼，全力去寻找爱和认同。与自由重逢，大海和天空，人翱翔世界大同。迷雾透出阳光，青鸟正在呼唤复活美梦。新的 是顺从，期待那天与你自由重逢。老箱子装的勇气，老箱子装的勇气，老箱子装的勇气，是全新的我。
同温层突破同温层，我是童文勋。